Hello, and welcome to our thought-provoking podcast with myself, actor, writer, director and deep thinker, Libby MacArthur, counsellor, life coach and all-round mountain man, Ross Hislop, and compassionate, strong advocate for women, motivational speaker and broadcaster, Anne Hughes. In this series of podcasts, we talk about the things that we hardly ever talk about. We attempt to unpack the obvious, important, enormous life topics, questions and controversial issues that no one hardly ever mentions or wants to discuss. Because it makes, well, at least some of us, feel a tad uncomfortable. Nothing here is overlooked. This is the elephant in the room. I learned so much from this week's podcast. We were charged with the task of analysing the notion of co-dependency. Being codependent, i.e. having a mental, emotional, physical and or spiritual reliance on a partner, friend or family member was a bit alien to me. I've always seen myself as a kind of chronic independent. Me and my dog, Jen Dog, will conquer the world alone. But life's just not like that, is it? As I very quickly found out when I put this notion to my colleagues Ross and Dan. What I found out was that codependency can come in all shapes and sizes and is really quite an unhealthy dynamic. This was new territory for me, and I really hope you learn as much from this podcast as I did. Enjoy. Do you know, Ross, I don't know very much about this. I suspect it's probably in my life in spades, but in terms of the actual title, we're looking at codependency. So we've got Ross, our counsellor, in the room. So, Ross, I know myself as a chronic independent. There's something that I think is a kind of dysfunctional element of my way of being in my world, as I see myself as being independent to my own detriment. Is that because I'm terrified of being a codependent?
So you've set yourself up as an independent, is what you're saying, that you don't need anyone for anything. What do you think would be the answer to that question, Libby, if I put it back to you?
If you were to know, yeah. When I think about codependency, I think about the fact that a guy told me once that if you were a crab fisherman, a crabberman, then if you were in your boat, right, and you were catching crabs, if you had your, what do you call it, a keel pot, a reel pot, you know, if you had your basket for the crabs, right, if you put one crab in, you need to put the lid on. Uh-huh. But if you put two crabs in, you don't need the lid because they hold each other back. As soon as one starts going sideways, the other one goes hey you and huggles it and brings it back. So when I think about codependency, I think about it being something that would hold two people, that would hold each other back. And my view of me is, if I was in partnership in the way that I haven't been in my life, I'd be always thinking about their happiness. My pal Irene would say the trouble is he'd be looking after him and you'd be looking after him and nobody'd be looking after you. So my scarcity belief is that that's my two bits of the seesaw. Either I'm a chronic independent or I'm one of those crabs and we hold each other back, and it's like I don't have enough faith in the middle of the seesaw. It's like I've kind of gone, well, obviously, I couldn't be in a co-creative, interdependent relationship. Mine would be, screwed up, no, codependent, and all living in each other's pockets, and me going, are you all right, darling? Do you want a beer? Do you want something to eat? I'd be doing all that kind of stuff. So better just cut my losses and just be on my own and do everything myself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think when we use the word codependency, we immediately, for those people that have heard of it, we immediately think of it within the world of addiction and recovery from addiction, and there might be a partner that enables their husband to drink, but there's actually a much deeper dysfunctional relationship going on there than perhaps in the world of addiction. It's like we could chronically keep our child sick, we could consciously keep our partner poor. And dysfunctional relationships, effectively, if we start to talk about this subject, which we're going to be doing today, which is a really difficult subject, is where we've actually kept our partner small, or people in our environment small, in order to give us a sense of authority or well-being, because Actually, the dysfunctional relationship that's going on started with self. It started early on in childhood, and we've maintained those dysfunctional relationships into adulthood. And from my perspective, today's relationships that I see round about me at all levels, be that relationships with partners, friends, family, or even government or churches, are completely dysfunctional. We're in a society of dysfunctional relationships at the core and the heart of them all. And we look after other people to give us a sense of well-being. And I said this earlier on before we started the podcast. I looked at my own codependent relationship style for the first time in 2010. I went to 3 meetings and stopped going. And then in 2014, after another breakup and another failed relationship, I went back to Codependence Anonymous for the second time. I maintained going through the process for 3 years. I've been 7 years past working a programme of recovery for codependence, and it is the most insidious disease there is. And I just want to put this into perspective. The fellowship, the 12-step process, the AA, a mutual aid that's there to support our community. There's Alcoholics Anonymous, there's Cocaine Anonymous, there's Narcotics Anonymous, and you could go to the fellowship, Google, and there'll be a dozen meetings throughout our city centres across the UK today. Every day you will find a meeting for any of the above afflictions. But if you go and look for a CODA meeting, there's one in Glasgow on a Wednesday and one in Edinburgh on a Sunday. And to me, that's just topsy-turvy. Because at the root of all addiction and the root of all disconnection, at the heart of the matter, is codependency. We're living in a completely codependent structure. It's so insidious and toxic to talk about.
And it starts really young, doesn't it, Ross?
It starts really young.
It starts in primary school.
It starts off in childhood. And we can't talk about codependency without talking about narcissism, because codependency and narcissism go hand in hand. And it's basically where our needs were never met from our caregivers, from an emotionally unavailable parent or an anxious parent or an alcoholic or drug addict parent, that the only way that we thought that we could get our needs met were through this dysfunctional relationship style, which is called codependency, which we're going to discuss today.
And I think, I like you, Libby, when we had this as our elephant, I was like, oh, what does it even mean? So I've spent a lot of time on the definition of it being, someone who can't function on their own, or that mental, emotional, physical and or spiritual reliance on a partner or a friend or a family member. And actually, I think where I get to, I believe actually it was coined by Alcoholics Anonymous, actually, now that you're saying that, in the 50s. But I think where I get to is, am I someone who can't function on their own? No, I believe I probably can function on my own. Do I want to function on my own? Not particularly.
No.
And I don't see anything wrong with that. And I don't know where that statement will take us.
Well, where that becomes, like, we look at it, as you said, it's coined in the AA and it's been getting used around about addiction. But for an example, where you have got a fear of abandonment, if any of us have a fear of abandonment in the room and we end up with a partner, what we may do is make that partner sick. We unconsciously make that person sick. Now, we could go into an absolute sci-fi horror film where we actually do give our partner dog tablets to make them feel sick, and we give them a different prescription to what. That's at the other end of the spectrum. That's when you're into psychopathology. And people do that.
They do, we all can think about partners that we know in our own lives, folk who have got together and they're in partnership together, and we can see the knight in white shining armour, the damsel in distress. Not always men and women in those roles, you know what I mean? And we can see the wee boy being mothered by his partner, And again, maybe
is it bigger though than just being in a romantic relationship, for example?
Absolutely.
It's about people codependent with their children, with their work, their boss.
Can I ask you something that you're passionate about, that I know that you're passionate about? Our society has created a society of dependence, and then the government is dependent on them being dependent on them.
It's actually like, I might go off on a total one because it suits society. We kid on that it's an inconvenience that people are on benefits. Do we actually want everybody to be their best self, to shine bright and to make it in the world? No, we don't.
Because then we'll expose them.
Of course.
We don't. We really don't. Society doesn't want me. I mean, we're going to go away doing... I could go into 100 elephants here because it's going to go away doing into class and everything for me. Just, does society want me to shine my light bright in the world, or does it actually want me, a wee lassie that grew up in Govan, to actually be the person that serves in a restaurant or cleans the buildings? I come from a very, very long line of cleaners. That would have been the industry that was handed down
When
to
I was
me.
in the John Maynes Community Centre in the Gorbals in the 80s, heroin was rife, you know, and all those beautiful boys and lassies that I was working with in my drama groups and stuff like that were dropping like flies, you know, and I used to say to them, not that I was talking about anything I knew, but I used to say to them, aye, that's brilliant, that's just where Thatcher wants you, just fucking in the gutter, you know, bringing in heroin through diplomatic immunity into here, and you're just doing exactly what's expected of you instead of showing up. We need you. Man a soup kitchen. Do something. Get on your feet. But, you know, this is you literally playing into the hands of this right-wing, you know, government at the moment, you know. Not that it did any good.
When we look at codependency, we start to define it as like an over-relying or an excessive reliance on another partner, when in actual fact that's not the truth either. It's not the case that we have an excessive reliance on another partner, and it's a codependent style which has got a poor sense of self.
Yes.
It's where we have got a
It's
really
a bit,
poor
isn't
sense
it? A
of
bit
self.
like manipulation,
Absolutely.
a bit bullying, a bit suffocation.
Oh, goodness, all of that.
It's
But
a bit
guys-
obsession.
But guys, can we say that see if folk are actually going to face this stuff, like, so for example, here's a story of, we need a backdrop of innocence, we need compassion for ourselves if we're actually going to face this stuff.
I know, I'm just and I'm just going to admit, it's like I have been in recovery from codependency for 7 years. Am I healed of it? No. But what I've learned to do is manage myself more effectively. So what I've done is I've actually stayed out of relationship. I don't have a partner. I'm single. And I have got an absolutely fantastic life and fantastic friends. I really have. I'm living the best life I have. I'm 49-year-old this year, and life couldn't get any better. But I don't have a partner. And I am terrified about going into a relationship with a partner, because at some level in my brain, I think I've got to give up all my hobbies.
Aye.
I've got to stop being who I am
But that
to
depends
be in
on the
relationship.
partner. I would never want a partner.
Can you
to do
imagine me,
that.
and I'm sitting here going, singing me softly with his words. No, who would want a partner like that?
No, of course
Is it
not.
an
But it wouldn't
inequality
be
of
the-
power?
When you start to break it down, it's like if I was in a relationship with you, Anne, and you said, no, Ross, you're not going to the house this weekend, I'd probably pretty much say, Anne, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't
say that, but when I've got 3 mains, I would have every right to say, no, you can't, because you've got 3 mains. And
Yes.
that's not going to work this weekend.
Yeah.
But if you
Yes.
didn't have wains, I wouldn't see why that would be an issue. Then that's a wrong relationship to be in, I would say.
Of course it is. I would be less scared of you saying that to me than me actually throwing all my gifts away to think that that's what you expect of me. I actually have this perversion in my head that I've got to give up all my hobbies and all my friends, because that's a way that I would show you how much I love you.
So is that what you expect a partner to do? If you think
That's an
that's what they
interesting
want you,
conversation.
if you think that's what they would want of you, is that some horrible thing that you would expect of a partner? I need somebody that's just going to be about me, that's no going to be about them. And therefore, that's a bigger question for
That's
yourself,
a
Ross
bigger
boy.
question, isn't it?
Because then what you're looking for is something that's actually a wee bit messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it?
If I'm willing to do that, then I'm unconsciously expecting you to do the same. Whereas if I give...
Called roles and duties. It's that trade-off thing of
Yes.
tit for tat. It's that tit for tat thing, I date for you. Do you
I
think,
would've done that
right,
for
Ross, do
you.
you think I handled this well, right? When I was pregnant and I was on maternity leave and total skint, right? The Wednesday came in and said, listen, I've just seen that chess computer I love and it's on sale and it's only 30 quid, down for 100. Now, the purse, which was the communal purse, was on the mantelpiece, right? And in a moment, I realised I had 2 options here, right? Because he said it's only 30 quid. Now, that was a long time ago. 30 quid was a lot of money. And it was a communal purse and it was up on the mantelpiece. So he looked at the purse and I looked at the purse, right? Now, I thought, wait a minute, this is a lose-lose for me. Because if I say, go and buy that chess computer, because he loved chess and he was brilliant at it, played postal chess and all that, he was a genius at chess. If I said, go and buy that chess computer because it'll make you happy and I love you, and I did, I'm doing 30 quid and I don't know how we're going to cope. If I say, what the... Are you kidding? A, I'm the nagging wife, and B, he can then go to the bar and prop it up his pal and go, I would have got that chess computer if it wasn't for her. I'm living a life where she's the one that's going. And I just realised it was a win-win for him. He got to be in the bar complaining about me or got a chess computer. And it was a lose-lose for me. Either I was a nagging wife or I was doing 30 quid. And I thought, this is a lose-lose for me and a win-win for him. What am I going to do? So what I said was, on your head be it. I mean, he slagged me for months and months after that. Who speaks like that? On your head be it. But it was the only thing I could come up with was on your head be it. Guess what he chose?
Their chess computer.
No, of course he didn't. Because he knew we didn't have 30 quid. He just wanted me to be the guy that gave him permission. So when I said, on your head be it, he didn't buy the chess computer. Do you think I handled that well, Ross?
You handled it how you handled it, but
Indeed.
how's that codependent on...
Because...
you were putting the responsibility back to him?
Yeah, because he was saying to me, I need you to be the guy that's either going to make me feel great because I've got a chess computer or make me feel great because I can go...
It would have been codependent if you'd have said aye.
Right.
And then you would have done without.
Yes. Yes.
So it was actually an act of
So
service.
is there something about on your head be it, which is the antidote to codependency?
What is the antidote to codependency? That's an interesting question.
Is it right that codependency is a learned behaviour? It's something that we learn. Where do we learn it from? I don't know. We learn it from society. You said at the start, Ross, about that codependent relationship we have with the church, not me personally, but a lot of people. I have to go to mass every week or I'll go to hell.
Aye.
And then I have this, people that do go to mass every week but are awful human beings. I don't go to mass, but I still don't think I'm going to hell because I didn't go to mass. I think you're probably still going to hell because you're not a very nice person. Do you know that way? So it's like that. I didn't mean to point at you, Ross. But it's like, so it's that we're so codependent in so many ways with so many things that is it just society's norm now?
Well, I think the Western mindset...
And we just all keep learning it.
The Western mindset has become addicted to being independent because the Western mindset has taught us that being dependent is pathetic. So what people do is they end up getting into this fiercely independent role on the risk of being pathetic. So they become addicted to that perspective, when in actual fact there isn't any truth in that. And those that think they're independent and portray to the world that they're Mr. or Mrs. Independent are actually chronically inferior because they're addicted to a structure that's not helpful. But, I'm independent and I don't need anybody for anything and I make my own reality and I make my own luck and I make my own world. That sounds all really good in theory. But in actual fact, the truth that's underneath it is they're absolutely running away from being dependent because they're terrified of that because society has taught them that dependency is pathetic. Even an independent person that's got their life on the surface sorted out isn't actually enjoying it.
Of course
because they're fiercely...
But anything that... an idea doesn't leave its source. So anything that seeds up a thing comes through where it's... So if fear's... you could be as independent as but it's all based in fear, then it's just going to seed up stuff,
Oh my God, is it ridiculous here if I start to say something like, look at Elon Musk, right? Try to go to space and all that. You would think he's the most independent man in the world. He's a billionaire, right? Mm-hmm. I'm in a codependent relationship with Elon Musk. Because he's got all his ridiculous wealth. But equally, I want to be able to order that new pearl of the night and for it to arrive tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Are we dependent on Prime? Amazon Prime? Co-dependent on Amazon Prime.
So we all can criticise Elon Musk, as many people do. I was talking to somebody this morning that was going to often one about Elon Musk and how vulgar the amount of money he's spending to go to space is, because it is vulgar. But actually, we are in a very codependent relationship because I give him a lot of my money.
Aye. And a lot of our energy even talking about him.
Exactly.
And, we again, it's breaking this down to not necessarily it being about our relationships with our partners or our families, but even our bosses and our world. And have any of us ever been in a relationship or found ourselves in a position where we feel like we're walking in eggshells when this other person walks into the room? With bosses. So the minute that we feel that we're walking in eggshells, so we've got, again, let me be a wee bit mindy and talk about the brain structures and survival mechanisms. When we feel fear, which is walking on eggshells, there's a survival mechanism struck up in our brain which is called fight or flight, freeze, fawn or flip.
I don't understand flip. I understand the other four.
Okay, so flip is where we align with the perpetrator in order to make them feel that we are like them as a safety mechanism, although we're nothing like them. So we align with their belief systems in order for our safety.
Gosh, and that's different from fawn. Fawn is just trying to be the people pleaser and placate the monsters. And
so when we're then feeling as if we're walking on eggshells with our boss, we've got fight. We're not really going to fight our boss because we need them to pay our wages, right? We've got flight. Well, we're not going to get up for our desk and run out because we want them to pay our wages.
You could still be fantasising about something else, which is flight.
We've got freeze, right? But predominantly the survival mechanism that we do with our bosses, we get into fawn. We start to people please them. We give ourselves away. That's codependency.
I've walked away every time for a bad boss. I've not had that many jobs in my life. It's why I work for myself now, because the last bad boss, at first I thought about fight, and I maybe did that for a wee while, and then I thought, nah, you're alright. So I actually walked out my work, not knowing how I was going to pay my mortgage that month or feed my wains. But what it came down to for me is I will not be I would rather have the stress of the conversation with the bank than have you mistreat me. So go fuck yourself, pal.
I think there's something about if you're seeing it, you're being it. So see when I feel that kind of thing of, oh my God, I'm judging you for being the last person I want to see in the morning. I think there's gold in them there hills. I want to find out something about me. And I think that obviously that's never more true than when you're in a relationship, you know, with somebody in a kind of romantic way.
Do you know what I'm fascinated by? Just as we're talking about it, where does the line come? Because I would say nothing happens in isolation. You know, we're all connected and everything. Right? You know, if that wee boy in China hadn't eaten that bat, I mean, God, it'd have been a different 18 months we've had. So there's a line where it's codependency and it's unhelpful and it's manipulative and it's suffocating and it's obsessive. But then there's a line where I'm codependent. I know I can't do life on my own.
But that's not codependent. That's co-creative interdependence.
So it's different.
Totally. People talk about having an expectation of other people. That's not a sense of entitlement. I have a huge expectation of you because I know you love me and I expect you to tell me the truth and, you know, and show up. And I have a huge expectation of you, Anne, that you'll never rip me off, that you'll never undermine me. You know, we have expectations and that's good. You know, but it's that thing of when fear's the driver, you know, like I say to myself quite often, there's worse things than being on your own. You know, that's true, but it doesn't have to be something that you live by. There's worse things being on your own. You know, that's just something that should be amongst other insights, not kind of the insight of my life, you know. And I have got abandonment complexes, so I am really hearing what you're saying about never wanting to do that to another person. I don't ever want to say to another person, you can't go and bungee jump in Australia because I love you.
Unless you've got 3 wains, as Anne said. Because then there's a family responsibility that needs to be adhered to. But then again,
you said, you know, if he wants to go and bungee jump in Australia, then, you know, on your head be it, you know.
And I think as we're attempting to get our listeners to get a felt sense of, am I maybe caught in some of these feelings, it's asking ourselves questions like, do you sometimes phone up your pals and say, I just spoke to Libby in this way, do you think I was right or wrong? And you're constantly checking how you've interacted with other people in other situations with other people. Well, then what you're doing is you're no validating yourself, validating your own truth, and you're asking other people. Now, you can ask your pals what their opinion might be, but when you've not got an opinion of your own, and you're needing them to check that.
That's codependency.
That's codependency.
I think it's also lying to yourself, quite honestly, because you always do know what you think. You know, and it's funny, I've got what Gary would call himself my wartime consigliere. That's because I only ever ask his opinion when I'm in a bad situation.
What did he call you?
He says I refer to him as my wartime consigliere. He coined the phrase, but now I say, right, I need your wartime consigliere. Because he'll give me a more balanced view maybe on it. And I've got a couple of pals who I would always go to, right, I think I've maybe been too Anne of the day. What do you think? And sometimes I'm like, aye, you are. Or sometimes I'm like, no, 100% you're right. So I have that is a very healthy codependent relationship, I would say I have there. I'm starting to worry I'm in an unhealthy, but I don't think
you're in a co-creative interdependent.
I need to start saying I'm
co-creative interdependent. But I think you're right, and you can't be blaming other folk. You can't kind of go, I've gone into sacrifice for you. and now you bloody owe me.
If you choose to sacrifice, you choose to sacrifice. That's on you.
Choose it or lose it. I quite often say to my girlfriends, look, choose it or lose it. One woman picked up the book in front of her at one point and said to me, look, this book sums me up. And the title of the book was Women Who Love Too Much. I was laughing, I was going, it's ironic. The title is That's Nothing to Do with Love. You go into overstretch and sacrifice. Nobody's a saint. It's like squeezing putty. There's going to be bleed through. You're going to get them back. If you overstretch for somebody, going to sacrifice for somebody, you're going to make them hate for everything about your life. You're going to make them hate for your own unhappiness. So I think my girlfriends despair of me because I'm always going, make yourself the villain of the piece. Make yourself the villain of the piece. Just know when it's all gone pear-shaped, it's your fault. And that way, you know, you can forgive yourself and move on. But if you're the victim, you'll be here to Tuesday trying to get somebody else to change. Other folk will not change because you don't like it.
Been a great thing, just looking at that sort of a definition of codependency, and that being the one that apologises even when you've not done anything. And my daughter, who's nearly 18, she always apologises, drives me mad. It drives me off my nut that she apologises so much. So anyway, other side of the pandemic, she's got her part-time job back as a waitress, and she's in a 5-star hotel, and they have told her, you need to stop apologising because it admits liability if you apologise for something that has not happened, and then people will want something for free. So if you say sorry because they spilt a drink on themselves, they'll go, aye, it was you that spilt it. Even though she never... Totally. She, all of a sudden, the last couple of months, this lassie doesn't apologise anymore. And oh my God, it is a beautiful thing to behold.
But you know, I personally would like to also talk about that thing of not being in overstretch and not being in sacrifice, but showing up for other people. Actually properly showing up for other people. Like, I've got a pal, right, and it's a big joke between her and I, and we've been pals for 40 years. But if I was to ask her, are you going to Boots, listen, would you pick up while you're there? Would you pick up for me? You know, she would go, So no matter what I would ask her, and I don't ask folk for things, being a chronic independent, no matter what it would be, she'd go, and I hate her. I hate her for it, right? I'm like, and she's like, I'm allowed to go, I'm allowed to just have a moment where I pause and consider, would I be in overstretch there? Would I be going into sacrifice? Can I be bothered? Do I want to? Whereas you, Libby, you say, aye, sure. And then work out how you're going to do it. And then end up running out of time and then end up being late for me when we're supposed to be going for a drink because you've bloody gone and done a favour for somebody. And so we argue about that, right? Because she would always go, whereas I would go, aye, sure. And then go, right, how am I going to do that? If I do that first and then I can pick up. So, I don't know. People might say to me something like, well, I knew you would show up for me if I asked you that. I like that.
This is interesting because what I'm hearing for you, Libby, is that you're a chronic independent, but you like other people to depend on you. Well, so you're all right with them being codependent on you.
I never said I want people to depend on me, because if they depended on me, they'd be in trouble. Because as you know, guys, I'll often be far too busy, late, not available.
Are we able to see that being a chronic independent is actually being dependent? It's the opposite side of the same coin. It's the head and the
tail of exactly the same coin.
It's exactly the same thing. So it's like...
But can I just say, it's not the whole truth. You know, oftentimes...
Neither the two of them are the truth. The only truth is interdependency and co-creation. That is the only truth. But if you want to get to interdependency and co-creation, you can't walk through the door of independence to get there. You've got to walk through the door of dependency to get there, which is vulnerability. And then we've got all these labels, that we've got all these associations to dependency, where we were in our dependent stages in our development, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, our needs weren't met. So any time that we feel dependent as a 48, 50, 60-year-old person, it immediately mirrors back to that place where our need wasn't met, and we will not go there. But by the mere merit of no going there actually means we're there. By the mere merit of saying I'm not going to go there, I'm going to be an independent, means you're actually there.
But can we also just say, as a grown woman, being independent as opposed to being dependent is an upgrade. Being a chronic independent who's never get married when she said or like she wanted to get married is an issue, right? So I think being independent has given me a lot of great things, right? I love being self-employed, having my own motor, having my own pets, my own house. I've never been financially dependent on anyone since I left the house, right? So when I was 17, I left my mum and daddy's house, and I have never, ever been financially dependent on another soul since. I pride myself in that, right? Is there issues about chronic independence? Yes, there is, for sure, right? But I never want to be a dependent. And maybe it's to do with my mammy. My mammy had 4 boys, 4 girls and 3 nervous breakdowns and was a dependent. There was nothing she could do but stay on a Friday night with her on it. And I don't think she ever got enough housekeeping. But that's another story. It's about the story in the past that we're living through a lens darkly.
And that's what, when I was trying to understand codependency, that's what came across for me, that it's a learned behaviour, that it comes from your past.
Well, if
it's sewn into us in a way.
It's sewn into us, because if our parents weren't emotionally available for us, and back in our generation, you would either have an alcoholic, less so drug addiction, but it was there in the 60s and 70s, emotionally unavailable, an absent parent, single parent families, less so in the 70s, became more common into the 80s and 90s, etc. But what we are all spending our time looking at is our smartphones. We've got a child right beside us and we're fixated on our phone.
There's real codependency, isn't there?
Right? So then that's creating the child to think that the smartphone is more important than them, and the child's not getting its needs met in an effective way. So what the child starts to do is get its need met for attention, to be seen, to be heard, to be met, in what we would then call in our adult language as a manipulative way.
Yes.
It's almost like, let me give you an example. 10, 15 years ago, at my office was down the hill, a mile down the hill from the village that I live in. And I walked up the hill on a summer's day, right? And I chapped the back door, and my pal's wife opened the door, and she was a scary woman. And I was like, that is calling in. She's like, no, he's away down to his dad's. He said you'll be back in 5 minutes. So I sat down, right? And I noticed, this is where I caught one of my negative traits and my character flaws. I started flapping my shirt saying, oh man, that's awfully warm out there, that hill. God, it must be about a 50-degree radiant on the way up. Man alive, I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm absolutely knackered. And she turned to me and says, do you want a glass of water, Ross? I said, aye, that would be great. I put the kitchen in their house. I plumbed the sink in. I probably took him to IKEA to get the glasses. I'm his best pal. I've known him longer than she'll ever know him, because he's been in my life when I was a child. I had every right to go up and get into the kitchen cupboard and get a glass and turn the tap on myself.
Or ask for
a glass of water. But rather than being rejected by asking, or being made to feel as if I didn't have the right to do that in my pal's house, I went around about getting that need met manipulatively. It's like going in through the back door. Instead of just walking up to the front door and saying, can I have, please? What we do is we utilise all this energy going right round the scheme, right round the houses and in through the back door. And that's a codependent system.
To try and get her attention. I remember there was a lovely moment bringing up my son when I said to him, well, it's a bit attention seeking, and he said, is there a problem with that, Mum? And I went, no, it's just manipulative. And he after that, came into the room going, attention, with his arms open wide, which was lovely. So if we need attention, then if we're attention seeking, then again we're coming to that thing of the elephant is that it's all coming for a belief in scarcity and no good enoughness.
Absolutely.
Do you think we've got, just because you held up your phone when you were talking about kids and you're on your phone, if we get a codependent relationship with our phones, with our social media accounts, they need us because they're selling advertising.
Yeah,
totally. So they need us, but we need them because the scroll never ends.
Because I don't believe necessarily in addiction per se, and the meaning of it in the word, and I sit more in a camp of trauma, and the camp in trauma that I sit in is it's coming from a place of disconnection. And because we feel so disconnected to ourselves, and our ability to be with ourselves is getting lesser and lesser, we will search for any stimuli in our environment. And what's the most stimulating thing that everybody's got in their pocket these days? A phone. It's like playing roulette. The minute you switch it on, the amount of likes you've got, getting interaction, feeling as if somebody actually gives a shit about what we've posted. But if I know that when I'm scrolling through a well-known social media site, I actually just hit like and don't even look at half the stuff. So if I know that I do that, then I know unconsciously that that's what other folk are doing to me. So really we're posting stuff up there into an invisible ghost. It's just getting lost in the cloud.
It is.
That hungry ghost.
And it's about things like this podcast. Do we do it to have that own endeavour in our own selves, like we're having a great conversation, we're thinking differently. I love to stimulate my mind and be thinking about things differently. It's my big thing, that there's always a different way to see stuff. Does it matter to me whether 10 people or 10,000 people listen to this? Theoretically, I try for it not to. I continually say with a lot of the stuff that I put out, because you know how I love all my positive stuff, it's not about how many people read it, it's about the intention with which I put it into the world.
Absolutely.
No, I can't say that I'm always 100% living by that. It does matter to me that people, I hope these are enjoying this, and I hope there's thousands of you listening to it. So it does matter to me. But ultimately, would I do it even if I only thought 10 people were going to listen? I would.
I would. If we touch one person, that's all that matters. If one person goes and says, I can't go on like this any longer through listening to this, our job here is done.
Aye. That's something I used to always say, you know, whenever I've been doing workshops and that kind of personal development type stuff, and you know, my job is to make myself redundant. You know, that's the gig. I've got students for acting or students for creative storytelling. You know, your job is to actually impart as much sharing knowledge as you can, you know, and then get out the way. I love Khalil Gibran about your children are not your children, they're arrows from the bow. You know, I just love that idea of, you know, the idea that you could be, you know, and I've said that to all the children I've taught and my son as well, you know, like, I'm nothing to do with you, you know, you've got your own choices. What do you think? What's your tummy telling you? What's your toes telling you, you know?
So how do you think we start to therefore reduce the codependent tendencies?
Can I tell you a story on that subject, Nan? This is what I think, right? I think, again, as elephants here in the room, we quite often come to this idea of accountability and authenticity, and I think these are buzzwords for us and certainly elephant words. Right, this is a story I want to tell you just to start wrapping up where we would go to heal this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I worked in the Great Eastern once, it was during Mayfest, and believe it or not, I was funded to do a drama workshop with 6 men who were all down and outs, right? So they were all men off the street, right? They were living in the Great Eastern, and I was there to do a drama workshop with them, right? And when we started to improvise and think about sketches and start sharing stuff and create a wee kind of play that we were going to show to the workers, what the joke was that they were all married to the same woman, right? So how that came about was we called her Wifey, and what it looked like as a joke was that Wifey had ultimately left them. Now, Wifey had either ran away with the postman or divorced them or got sick and left the house through illness or died, but whatever happened, Wifey got out of there. And who Wifey left behind was completely infantilised, completely emasculated. And it turned out that these guys had all been married to the same kind of woman, and this kind of woman did everything. She opened up all the brown envelopes, she paid all the bills, she looked after all the wains, she constantly said, what would you be without me, you bloody useless lump? She did all the housework, he did very, very little to keep their life ticking over emotionally, physically, psychologically. She was in charge of everything. And it was like that was the only place in life, in her world, that she had any power. And she was using him. And basically, when she died, ran away with the postman, whatever, what she left behind was a 5-year-old who couldn't cook an egg. And what every single one of those 6 men told me was that alcohol, which was in their life, chronic drinking and using alcohol was much later. And losing the house was through alcohol abuse. But the first thing that happened in the trajectory of them ending up in the gutter, in the street, was she left. And what we looked at was that in society, it looked like she was a pure catch, a total loving wife, fantastic, did everything. So for me, the accountability, the authenticity is, I'm thinking is this idea of we need to look at what does love look like? How do you empower your loved ones? And it's not by doing everything for them, infantilising them, emasculating them, or the opposite, the damsel in distress, the knight in white shining armour. It's the same thing.
To speak up for the woman that left, I bet you that it was the same 6 men that they left, it was the same 6 men that raised them to no do anything for them.
Totally.
And for them having to do everything. And for that to be the only way they could protect themselves in the world.
So what if the woman actually said to her man, please help me, I cannot do this.
He wasn't there for her to say it because he was doing the pub.
Well, I wasn't doing the pub, and the reason I went to Codependence Anonymous 7 years ago was because I had a feeling that I had lost a sense of myself within the relationship. And metaphorically and in truth, this is exactly what happened. When I moved in with my partner, my clothes started to become less in the wardrobe and she started dressing me and buying me shirts. Now, that's not to blame her. I accepted it because I never had a sense of self. So that was codependent there.
And I have to be careful about who we blame in that.
It's not about I'm blaming me. I'm blaming me, if anybody, because if I had a sense of self, I'd have said, thanks for that shirt, but take it back. It was a nice shirt. It was a lovely shirt, so I'd wear it. But what I started to metaphorically notice was, when we moved in together, my side of the wardrobe was fully 100% of my clothes that I'd gathered over the last decade. What started to happen was that particular partner started to bring clothes in subtly and under the radar, and my stuff started to go in the bin until I then became a prodigy of her mindset, which then is where we start to see codependency and narcissism both in the same hand.
Because it obviously served you in some sense for you not to be aware of it in your wardrobe.
And that's why this is a brilliant elephant. This is because the story I'm telling you about the Great Eastern...
I don't think it's funny.
No.
I don't see it as a funny thing for me not to be aware of what was in the wardrobe. But it's not having awareness of a sense of self.
Ross, see these guys, can I just say, see these 6 men...
When somebody admits that they've not got a sense of self, I don't see the humour or hilarity in no knowing what was in the wardrobe. It's no knowing who I was.
And it's why those 6 guys went in the gutter, because at the end of this workshop with the Great Eastern, it was a total revelation for these guys. They thought they were total losers. They had came out of those 6 marriages saying, my wife was a saint, my wife was a goddess, I was shit under shoe. And it was an incredible insight for them to actually be able to say, oh my God, if she'd just been able to share with me, she didn't need to run away with the postman, she didn't need to get sick. Do you know what I'm saying? It's no a blame game, man. It's basically, how do we love each other? And I think we love each other by calling each other to be the best that we can be for yourself. Not for the other person.
Getting lost, I suppose, in a relationship where I'm no longer me, I'm now half of you. Like when people say, where's your other half? That makes me shudder.
Me too.
I don't have another half.
Me too.
I am a whole all on my own. But we all need to therefore own that, don't we? We all need to own.
And I think if we're going to heal domestic violence and abusive relationships, we don't laugh at the person not knowing what was in their wardrobe.
Yep.
Because that's not going to heal domestic violence in relationships, laughing at what's no in the wardrobe. But the people not knowing who they are, because we've now got young women that are getting fillers, they're getting plastic tits, they're getting their teeth done, they're getting their face done, and they're driving the white Range Rover Sport that the boyfriend is providing. What, do we laugh at them because they didn't know what was in their wardrobe? Or do we empower them to get a sense of who they are so that they can go out and help other young women and men?
But also, Ross, can we hold a space that's compassionate enough for people to say, I was the shadow in that relationship?
Absolutely.
It looked from society's eyes like I was the guy that, I know men that would dress their wains and she would completely undress and put totally different clothes on, going, what are you doing? And I would go, that's her da, let her da put on, So how do we hold a space with enough compassion to say, you can afford to say, oh God, I'm doing this for me, not for you. Oh my God, I'm the villain here. Oh my God, I was trying to be a loving person. I was trying to be a good person. I was trying to nurture you and look after you. But actually what's happening is I'm just undermining you. I'm just treating you as if you're a wee boy when you're a grown man. I'm just treating you as if you're a damsel in distress with a big pokey hat with a D on it for dunce.
And that's a lacking, isn't it? And us, I was nae mothered, or I don't feel mothered, therefore I will mother you, or whatever.
Take accountability. Let's be authentic.
And we'll never get to a healing through undermining anybody.
Never.
We'll never get to that. And I think that society is based on, we're getting into kind of capitalist topics about that's what they're bred to do, undermine the disadvantaged. When in actual fact, we're all disadvantaged. We're all undermining ourselves and we're all undermining each other. So we kind of think that we're not.
And it's ironic that, looking for the divine spark in everyone and actually understanding that sometimes the person we see at least in is the person we're in bed with.
And it's making me think like the word namaste that you would say at the end of a meditation or whatever.
Absolutely.
And it's the divine in me worships the divine in you. And if we could see that in each other and not try to change each other.
Can we just say, guys, that's a beautiful way to end this podcast.
Lovely.
So we'll just say it to each other and to the folk out there listening. Namaste. See you next time. Thank you for listening to our programme. You can find future episodes on Acast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. With thanks to Matt Ramsey for editing and mixing this episode. This podcast was produced by Solace Sounds.